No think. Longing is the music of our sphere. The gift of life is never more or less. It starts at any time you like and ends in just a wink. Pass me the lighter, baby.
Heavy rains flood parts of Auckland.
So that's looking
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome on to the Daily Examiner. Thank you for joining us on this Monday night. We hope wherever you are warm and safe and dry. And if not, we are thinking of you and hoping that you are able to get to safety and that all is going well with you. Hey, this is an ongoing situation that we're discussing tonight with the flooding in Auckland, but not only Auckland, also around other parts of the country as well. Before we get into any discussion, we would like to acknowledge those that have passed in this tragic situation. So our thoughts and prayers are with the families and friends of those who have lost their lives. Good people have unfortunately been taken from us this weekend. We know that at least one of the people who was taken was in the process of helping save those who were affected by the flood, helping to evacuate. So our thoughts are with his family and with his friends, and we thank you and we're grateful to him for what he's done. But anyway, welcome aboard tonight. As I said, this is an ongoing situation. This is not over. So please do be careful out there. If you do need to travel, be safe. And if you don't need to travel, then do stay home and stay safe. As you would have seen earlier this afternoon, the Council and Civil Defence have upgraded the rain warning in North Auckland, Northland and Coromandel to red. So we are expecting more rain. So please do be aware of that. Please do be safe and do what you can to keep yourselves and your family dry and safe from the rain that is coming. Before I invite the panel members on, I'd just like everyone to be aware of where you can go for help. So we're going to pop that up on the screen now. So obviously, if it is a life-threatening or urgent situation that is dangerous to your safety, please do dial 111 immediately. Also, do be aware that the helplines on 111 are very flooded with calls at the moment. So please do only call if it is urgent and it is if your safety is in imminent danger. There are civil defence evacuation centres in West, North and South Auckland, as you can see on your screen now. If you do need more information, please do call Civil Defence on the number listed below, 0800 22 2200, or go onto their Civil Defence website. Anyway, with that out the way, we would like to welcome our panelists on tonight. We have Victoria O'Brien from the Daily Examiner. Welcome, Victoria. Hope you're doing well tonight.
Hi, Dave. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Yes, doing well. Thank you. Very fortunate.
Thanks, Victoria. And also joining us, a longtime friend of the show, Craig Lord. Welcome in, Craig.
Good evening, Dave, Victoria, all the viewers. Thanks for having me on.
Hey.
So we'll get into it right away with you two. How are you two both doing? Victoria, we'll start with you. You're Northwest Auckland. How are things out your way?
So, yes, things in West Auckland, I'm based in Titirangi and have a farm in North Auckland. So we do travel to our farm almost every day. And so we get to see what's going on the motorways quite a lot. West Auckland was very badly hit. Titirangi, South Titirangi in particular as well. Quite a few areas still without council water. So anybody who doesn't have a water tank is currently being supplied by large tankers placed in various places in the neighborhoods. Also, we had quite a few power cuts, but there have been a lot of slips. So as you may well know, West Auckland is quite hilly, and there's some quite large areas where houses are continuing to be put in danger, or rather being put in increasing danger because slips are widening. I think we've had Scenic Drive closed and quite a few roads leading around it. There were large slips on Titirangi Road as well. North Auckland, because I take State Highway 16. State Highway 16 was entirely closed today between Stony Creek Road just south of Calcop to West Coast Road. So it's a very large stretch, and it was probably because of it was closed around that time of the high tide. But there are two places in particular where the state highway goes quite close to basic sea level. And these regularly flood anyway, but the whole area in between, there are many slips. So it's been an interesting time. You can see that's the rural postie. The postie van got stuck. That was taken yesterday. The entire area there was all flooded. That particular photo is just taken north of Helensville. You've got all around Kumeu, Helensville was all flooded. That was, in fact, State Highway 16 just north of Helensville. South of Helensville yesterday. These are cars which were just left on the road. Some of them, someone also calling for emergency services. I think shortly after I got through to check on the farm yesterday, State Highway 16 was closed again. So, of course, we've had much more rain today again. I think on our farm we got 74 millimeters of rain when only about 10 millimeters was forecast, and that was on Weather Watch, which is usually pretty good. For tomorrow, Weather Watch is forecasting 40 millimeters of rain. So I hope we don't get the same proportionate increase for reality, but that is what it is. I mean, we knew that there was going to be a lot of heavy rain. We just didn't realize how much rain there was. Unfortunately, I farm on quite hilly ground, so the rain drains away quite quickly. It's not so good in summer, but very, very thankful for it when we have a big event like this. And over to you, Craig.
Yeah, well, we're basically neighbours. I'm only 1.5 suburbs away from where you are in Titirangi. I'm in Blockhouse Bay. It was relatively minor in my area compared to what others around Auckland had to deal with. I had a little mini Waikato river running through the front of my property and under my house, and then 4 houses up. And it was all due to blocked drains being overwhelmed with all that water coming in. So in regards to Henderson, as you've said, it's pretty grim out that way. New Lynn had a few issues. I know that only one street away from me, the tarmac lifted on one of the major roads. So the water got underneath there, and that's actually right next door to a culvert. So obviously the culvert couldn't handle the water flow that it was meant to. Granted, it was more than they probably designed it for, but it couldn't cope. So we've had the issues around here. There are slips. Blockhouse Bay as well is quite hilly. And for me, whilst I'm at the bottom of a hill, I'm still about 80 metres away from Faux Creek, which many Aucklanders would know is one of the major creeks and rivers that runs into an estuary. It goes through to Avondale and out to the ocean that way. It rose by my estimation walking down there about 5 metres. Wow. And although I'm 80 metres away from it, I'm also slightly elevated above it. So I didn't get any of the effect of the Faux Creek filling up and overrunning its edges. The houses further down, I haven't been able to talk to anyone down there to see if they got hit by it. So yes, I was affected, but I can thank my lucky stars. I have not been affected to the point of many others. I've still got power, still got water, wastewater, sewage. I've got access in and out of my road up to the local supermarket and shops. So it's all good here. And given that new rain warning is really, they're sort of estimating from Orewa higher, we should be okay for the rest of the week. So fingers are crossed.
I think what we're seeing is that because the ground is already so wet, that any more rain simply exacerbates existing issues. So I saw on one of your Facebook posts about the reason why your street flooded. Can you tell us a bit more about what you and your son actually did?
Yeah, well, it's I know one reason guaranteed. The secondary reason is fairly educated speculation, if we can use that term. So what happened was there's a side street off mine. It's only about 50 to 100 meters up the road, and that goes downhill, and it has a dip in it and then goes back up a little bit. It's a dead end street. So what happened is right in that lowest part of that street on both sides are 2 drains. So 4 drain covers in total. They were fully blocked. So what was happening was the water was accumulating in the bottom of that street. It couldn't escape through the blocked drains. That then, water being what it is, it takes the easiest path, and the easiest path was straight through the properties. So it went through 1, 2, I'm counting now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd be the 5th one. It hit my place, then 6, 7 before it got down to the inlet towards Faux Creek. So even though the creek is below us and it is a major runoff for all stormwater, because the water was coming through our properties instead of the normal system of the underground pipes or in the gutters and drains, we got hit by it. So we had to go down and help the neighbours clean out those drains. So we were all swimming in it like many Aucklanders were to try and clean some drains. And as soon as my son ripped into it and cleared those 4, the water almost disappeared. It vanished. And everyone's properties suddenly stopped having a river through them. But then the rain came back heavy again about half an hour to an hour later. I wasn't really looking at the clock too much at the time. And I looked out on my property when the next rain hit and, we're flooding again. So back up to it. They were only partially blocked this time. So more debris had come in, and there ended up being about 6 of us in there, just in the dark, standing in the middle of the water up to knee height, just clearing drains as more debris came through. So yes, there is an issue, and that issue is the infrastructure couldn't cope, and bad maintenance added to that. The speculation part is where that water was all coming from, and we were looking at the property that it was exiting onto the street, and it looked like it was coming from a street further over, which is up on a hill and coming down the hill. Now, I know the street well, and I was trying to work out exactly where it would have come from, where that street would have been overwhelmed, allowing that water runoff to come down the hill into this other chap's property, across the street, etc. And that's where the speculation comes in of the infrastructure that has recently been done on that street, with a lot of new properties, a lot of new buildings, and a lot of water runoff and concrete and stormwater facilities that can't cope. And it's proven, and I think around Auckland, elsewhere as well, it has proven itself that everybody's assumptions have come true, that it's not just the drains itself, it's the supply to the drains is becoming a major problem. So that's our speculation guess. As we were standing knee high in the pouring rain, we were chatting away, and everyone we're pointing up in the hill, and we're all going, where's this water coming from? That's what we believe is going on. How do you prove it? Difficult, but gee, you don't have to be too wise to take that as a fairly viable option.
Oh, thanks, guys. I'm glad to hear that you guys are both okay in your area. Hey, I know that we've spoken about this previously when we were talking to you, I think earlier last year, Craig, during your campaign. Obviously, West Auckland has had an issue for the last few years with flooding. This is not the first time that it's happened in West Auckland. This is definitely the most severe in recent times, at least. And it's also a wider Auckland issue. So we're going to get into some discussion of why we think this is happening. We're going to get on to Three Waters a bit later when Matt King joins us. But for now, I know that you've mentioned in the past that there is an issue, Craig, with the streams and stormwater drains in your area, especially not being cleared. What are some of the issues with some of the infrastructure in Auckland, and especially West Auckland, that is causing this flooding every time we have heavy rain?
Yeah, well, it is all the way across the entire Auckland region, but in particular out in West and Norwest, and we're talking up in Kumu district. The drainage, the clearing of the Kumu stream and the culverts was stopped. And that's a major issue, and it should never have been allowed to have been stopped. But that was the local board that made that decision, and it was a ridiculous decision. And they did it because of climate change, of all things, and they didn't want to create silt and dirt and wreck the ecostructure of the river going out to the ocean. So unfortunately, because the dredging stopped at some point, the problems have started. Yes, there is an issue with people building on floodplains. That's a separate issue, that is a separate discussion. We've got the problem of council responsibility and what they should be doing to mitigate. And that's where my argument has always landed. It's on the mitigation of problems. You will never stop rain falling. You'll never stop tides. But what you can do is stop a lot of the damage and hurt coming from bad decision making. And that's got to happen. And Foe Creek, just 80 metres from my own property, is a major runoff into the estuary at Avondale. That doesn't get cleared. And I have spoken to a couple of the organisers of a group called DTEC, Down to Earth Kiwis, who clear out rivers and streams and waterways around Auckland. And he has told me that right across Auckland, they are not being maintained by council. They're not getting cleaned. They are just full of rubbish, but not just rubbish from residents, but natural rubbish, tree stumps, dirt piles, rocks, silt, all these things that are not being cleared out because for some reason contracts are not being allocated to make it happen. That is a fundamental fault, and it's something that needs immediate addressing. It was something that I wanted to see happen from day one, that we start to change the way Auckland Council works on mitigation, because everything you hear is barking about climate change, where I want to bark about how to stop the effects of it, because the little things we do won't change the climate, but we can change what it's doing. So that's been my argument, and I still believe in it. We've got some major infrastructure and contractual problems that need solving desperately.
Right. All right, Matt King is with us now, so we'll bring Matt on. Matt, good evening. How are you doing?
G'day, how are you, Dave? Nice to see you. Nice to meet you. See you. Hi, Craig. Hi, Victoria.
Yeah, welcome on board. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're not floating in a boat or up to your ankles in water where we can't see on the camera.
Oh, look, we have a bridge at the bottom of our road. We live in rural New Zealand, in the far north, and every time there's a rainfall, we're flooded in. But hey, there's no chance of our house ever getting. If our house had water running through it from the rain, Noah's Ark would be floating by, because we're up on the hill. Yeah.
All right, you would have heard Craig's comments just before about the drains not being cleared and the climate change alarmism basically blocking these drains from being cleared, which is causing major flooding. What are your thoughts on this issue, and how is it affecting you in Northland?
Look, I think we can't. The climate change stuff is an issue where I say, look, we as a party don't believe that there's a climate Armageddon coming. We believe that weather changes and we have to adapt as Kiwis, as New Zealanders, as human beings. We just have to adapt. I don't know much about the infrastructure. Craig would know a lot more about the infrastructure of the drainage systems. But that was a massive weather event, a massive dump, and I don't think any system could cope with the amount of water that we got in the period of time we got. I think anywhere, any place would have suffered. But in Northland, we've got we got a lot of clay soil, and when we have a heavy rain. I mean, we've got one out state highway through the Mangamuka Gorges. It's closed yet again. Massive expense to repair it, and you sort of wonder in the long term, sort of what's the answer long term to dealing with these problems? Because the Mangamuka Gorge is all hills. The road goes through, winding through the hills. So at any time, any side of the hill could let go. So I don't know what the answer is. I do know in other countries where they invest properly in the infrastructure, they don't have the issues we have. I know in some countries in Europe they tunnel through, and it's not an issue. But we don't have the population or the income to spend that kind of money on infrastructure. So we're always going to be behind the eight ball.
Yeah, Victoria was mentioning the infrastructure overseas as well, like in Singapore, how they have big monsoon drains. And I also have lived in South Korea as well, where they also have massive drains, which are empty most of the year, but they would be 10 meters across, 10 meters deep, massive drains. And Victoria, you were mentioning about how the citizens of those countries are actually required to keep the drains clear. Do you want to speak to that, and what is something that could be done similar to that here in New Zealand?
Well, it's always quite interesting when you sort of see what people are required to do outside their own homes, take responsibility. So in Singapore, for example, because it is just an island, it's quite small. And everyone lives in a very urban situation. When there is actually very heavy rainfall, the monsoon drains take everything away to the water reservoirs, because, of course, Singapore doesn't have much natural water resources either. Every person who has a big monsoon drain outside their house is required to keep those drains free from leaves. It's on pain of penalties and all sorts of things. There are council inspectors that come round and make sure that it's all done. Similarly, by the way, with standing water, because in Singapore you get dengue fever. But I mean, aside from that, it just shows that instead of us sort of just requiring, we just wait for council, really, mainly to say, well, how about we actually take responsibility and clear those drains? Heaps of people have deciduous trees too, by the way. Trees drop leaves, but we just sort of wait for council to do it. In the end, council is not really anything other than us. I mean, it's our rates that fund it. But unfortunately, of course, don't forget, when we have these great big weather events, we pay the price too, right? So we might as well, take responsibility for these sorts of things. What I note as well, of course, is that some people have commented that the volume of rain that was seen happens quite a lot in other countries, and they don't flood like it either. I'd like to draw people's attention to new developments like Hobsonville Point, which fared extremely well. And that's because every new house there is required to have, many new developments. Not sure about specifically Hobsonville Point. Many new developments are required to have rainwater retention tanks, as well as retention ponds, so that there is somewhere for the rainwater, the stormwater to flow into. Also, don't forget, these are new developments, right? So the stormwater system within the new development is set up for the number of dwellings and the impermeable area which is present in that development. Now, let's go back then to existing suburbs such as Titirangi, such as Blockhouse Bay, where there are heaps of infill housing. New developments are required to have development contributions, and also, of course, upgraded infrastructure, but not so in existing developments, right? Existing suburbs. We just have to cope with whatever all the feeder pipes are, and that's it. So I think that's a major issue, like you've already drawn on, Craig, because you just see how the new developments have coped with all the requirements for stormwater, and you have a look at how the existing suburbs have coped, and just that's the difference. So
look, it certainly is, and that's because we know that sort of rain that we had on Friday, nothing will cope with that. No stormwater outlet copes with that. But you can try and reduce the effects of it by having proper infrastructure in there, and maintained infrastructure is an important part of that as well. So as you said, new developments designed around it. This infill housing that has been opened up by the government, this new rules that they've gone in where you can just put developments anywhere you want. We can't plan for that anymore. So Auckland Council cannot plan its future infrastructure for infill housing. This is going to become more of a problem as years go on.
Yes, well, we can't have State Highway 1 and State Highway 16 going up north entirely shut, for example. There are a lot of people in Northland screaming out. There's a friend of ours whose mother lives up north, and she was told, sorry, there's no food delivery for the foreseeable future, which is not really what you want to hear, because you don't know when State Highway 1 or State Highway 16 are going to be open.
It's quite a terrifying perspective that all of Northland was cut off, eh? We'll jump into the roading shortly. Before that, let's get a little bit controversial and invite our politicians to have a go at it with Three Waters. Is this current event that's happening right now in Auckland a case for Three Waters, or is it a case against it? Matt and Craig, have at it.
Okay, well, I think it's got nothing to do with it. I think Three Waters is an asset grab, and it's nothing to do with, all these infrastructure which was paid for by ratepayers over the years, and what they're trying to do is about as useful as the merger with the TV and the TVNZ and Radio NZ. It's not needed. It's being merged for a totally different reason from what they're selling it for. And I don't think. There's always going to be a massive demand for infrastructure investment, and we're always going to have underinvestment. You can never have too much investment in infrastructure. So, but I think this Three Waters thing's got nothing to do with it. It's just like they're saying climate change is this water dump has got to do with climate change. It's just virtue signaling and it's a distraction as far as I'm concerned. That's my view.
Craig, Three Waters, good or bad for this situation?
Well, Three Waters is an absolute shocker of an idea. It is, as Matt said, a pure asset grab, but it's also another grab, and that's a grab for power on co-governance, which I find quite disgraceful. It should never go through for that. And if Three Waters existed, or they're trying to make it exist now, if that was going ahead or it was in operation as we speak, it wouldn't have changed anything. In fact, it could even make it worse, because we'd be operated by people who aren't living local. They'd be operated by a satellite board down in Wellington somewhere, trying to tell us how to deal with our issues up here. So it's not going to solve the problems, and it certainly wouldn't change anything that had happened over the last 48 hours. So no, it's a pure asset and power grab.
All right, Victoria, any thoughts on Three Waters from you?
I totally agree with Craig and Matt. Adding another layer of bureaucracy is not going to help at all. All the rules are there in place. All the engineers and advice are all there. Water's not actually hard to manage. We know the absorption rate. We have 100-year events and their levels. We know impermeable surfaces. And let's plan for it. I mean, like I said, I go back to what's been put in place for the very new developments, Hobsonville Point. They've managed it. Yes, people got a little damp, but there was no flooding there, and things were very well managed. So we actually need to plan for such things. And you can't say that Hobsonville Point's not quite a moderate density development. It's got plenty of townhouses and that sort of thing. It's quite a dense suburb, really, but it was infrastructure is provided for very well there, and Three Waters is not going to change it. It's just going to make things worse.
If I can just butt in here, that was a really good point you made at the start, Victoria, saying that water is controllable. We know what it does. That's exactly right. For tens of thousands of years, humans have manipulated water, and they know how to deal with it and control it. Yet for tens of thousands of years, we keep building in dumb places. We just keep doing it. And I do not understand the logic behind it. When we know that an area is going to flood, and yet they will still put housing there, boggles my mind how this is still doing this in today's date.
And who's responsible for that? Because we've got the issue like close to my area, which fortunately has been spared from most of the rain. But if it hadn't, it would be a complete disaster in Takanini and the Addison area, because all those houses are effectively built on a floating peat swamp, which becomes a lake if you get any rain at all. And that should never have been built on. Who's responsible for that?
Well, in my opinion, and Matt might be able to give more insight on this, but in my opinion, you can't stop it in a way, because the landowner is welcome to sell their land to a developer or become a developer. And I guess then it comes down to the engineering permits to be allowed to build there. So then, yeah, the council could say, hang on, this is a floodplain. No, you can't build there. But does the council have that legal right to tell someone they can't build in certain places? And I guess this is where the legalities come in. Maybe Matt might know more about that.
No, I don't, Craig, and I wish you'd become the mayor. You make too much sense. You know why you didn't get it? Because you're making too much sense. So that's we all know about that. Sometimes people just don't get elected because they're straight talking and too much common sense, and people like the flowery ones,
Quick fire. Oh, you keep going.
Yeah, go. Yeah.
Quick fire before we move on to the roading. Wayne Brown's under fire. Should he resign? Matt,
Nah.
Victoria, Craig?
No, I think they're making a scapegoat of him. I think I'm no fan of Wayne Brown's, but he is a guy that he's abrasive character, but he's questionable whether. And I don't want to be in court, so I'll be careful what I say. But I would say it's unfair to try and attack him now. And anything Simon Wilson writes, throw it in the bin, because he's a partisan, buddy. He lefty. But and I think they're attacking him because it's political attack, and He might not be the most charismatic communicator, but he's got a job to do, and he's just let him do it. That's my thoughts.
Victoria, Wayne Brown, should he resign?
No, that's ridiculous. I mean, if we just threw everyone out before they had a chance to do anything, then we'll be switching around politicians all the time. I mean, for goodness sake, we've put up with absolute mismanagement, chronic and incredible mismanagement of the country for how long now? We haven't thrown anyone out. So give this guy a chance to actually do something.
Craig, you've got the most skin in the game. Should Wayne Brown resign and you take over tomorrow?
No, he shouldn't resign. Look, those of us who were on the campaign trail almost 24/7 with the man know that he is a boardroom guy. That's who he is. He is treating Auckland Council job as though he is the chair of a board. It's not exactly accurate to the role. He knows that. That's why he uses a lot of media staff and does press releases rather than stand-ups and media conferences, and doesn't like talking to the media, because that part of the important political leadership role he is not good at. He knows that. And that's where his failings are coming down. But at the end of the day, he has been voted in as mayor, and he stays there, in my opinion, whether I like him there or not.
Good thoughts, good thoughts. All right, let's move on to the roading. As we mentioned before, Northland was effectively completely cut off, I believe. At least the two major highways getting into Northland from Auckland were completely cut off, and suppliers were unable to get through. There's been the Dome Valley Road, which has not just been due to the flooding, but also to, I believe, the tar seal melted a couple of weeks back and was causing major issues. The Bradurans are closed down. And also there's been major issues with the new Puhoi development on State Highway 1. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Look, we're poorly served in Northland for roads. Our roads are the worst in the country, in my view, apart from some areas of the East Coast. And when I travel south, I come through Auckland and head south. It's amazing, the roads and the quality of the roads and the lack of vehicles on them sometimes. And then I drive back north, and I feel like we're going back in time. And I that's why I think Northland needs the 4-lane highway, but it just needs to be built to the standard that it's meant to have been built at, with the proper materials that it's meant to have been used. So no shortcuts. And I think the resilience, I mean, we rely on State Highway 1, and in part, State Highway 1 is the only road heading north. And for a whole of Northland to rely on those two little lanes and the way it's been constructed is we're well overdue. So if I'm successful, we'll be pushing hard to carry on the 4-laning expressway from Warkworth through to Wellsford and then on through to Whangarei. So I drive that road a lot, and we're very vulnerable. And a lot of people, a lot of business, and a lot of industry won't move north because of the state of the roads. We had an example. We had a business set up in Kerikeri, employs a lot of people, produces a lot of product. The only reason they came north is because they have family connections, but they said the roading was so bad that they considered relocating or setting up in the Waikato because of the nature of the roads. So we're being held back in Northland because of our roading, our infrastructure, and it's a massive expense. But we've just got to do it in stages. We've got to start Whangarei South, do that leg which the previous national government promised, and continue on. I heard everything's been canned. Like every 4-lane highway booked in the last few years, the Labor government have cancelled. And they've done a really terrible job of upgrading Dome Valley, making it just a slow, useless bit of road, cutting down and overtaking lanes and having a big cable running down the middle of it. So it's just a band-aid measure for Northland. We need a 4-lane highway heading to Whangarei. And I tell you what, when we get that road, and it'll be decades away, when we get it, Northland's just going to go gangbusters, and Craig's going to be wanting to become the mayor of Northland.
Victoria's just asked about the Marsden Point issue. Obviously, Marsden Point was a major supplier of fuel, well, the only supplier actually of fuel to New Zealand. What effect has the Northland roads had on the fact that it's now closed down, and what can be done there?
Well, I mean, a lot of our bitumen was made there too, and if let's say we received a substandard grade of fuel, at least it could be redone at Marsden Point. You could fix it, but now we don't even have that. So over to you, Matt.
Oh, look, the Marsden Point situation is, to me, it's a strategic asset that, I mean, I'm not for nationalisation, but I just think to let our only refinery go and fold is just, I don't know. I just think we needed to treat it as a strategic asset and do whatever it takes to keep it going, because we're going to need oil and gas for the foreseeable future, and we're very vulnerable now. And the Marsden Point refinery had not just oil and jet fuel and diesel and everything else. It was the bitumen that you talked about, and the CO2 and all the other things, and all the employment and all the surrounding industry that kept it, was really good for Northland. So I just think it's very short-sighted, and I see what this government have done, and have just set us back decades. These guys have set us back decades for virtue signalling. I don't know, behaviour. I think it just shows. It's to me, it's economic sabotage. It's what it boils down to for me.
Craig, from an engineering perspective, what needs to happen for the roads in Northland? Also, there's obviously rail, which is available to Northland, but it's not being used very well. Is that an option for Northland, or is roading the way forward? What do we need to do there?
Well, let's just clarify that I'm a hydraulic and pneumatic engineer, not a roading and rail engineer. But we all think logically and with a pragmatic approach. When I think about the roading issues up in Northland, two things come to mind. One is the cost versus population. And I think that's where the government look at it as well. They go, how many people live there compared to other areas in the nation where we put our money and we invest our efforts into building? So you can sort of see why some decisions are made. Does that mean it's fair? No. But you can sometimes understand some of the math that would have been done in deciding what to do, but they are in a bad state. The problem is that we need Northland to thrive, and the infrastructure up there is a shocker, and they need to rethink the model that they use of population versus economics. And they need to realize that we can make a better change and a better Northland by investing in that infrastructure. The rail is it's a problem, and we'd end up talking about the ports and a topic that I don't want to delve into tonight, but there's a huge amount of money that must go into Northland, and whichever government is in power, whichever party forms that government, they need to understand that a new model is required up there. We've got to get it sorted. And it's not just holidayers. I'm sure sometimes that comes into the argument. They'll be saying things like, oh, we only need the road for the Aucklanders that go up for the holidays and come back again. But it's not. We can improve the economic benefits of Northland by sorting out that roading, as Matt has said. It's amazing how much roading changes a nation. We can't be goat tracks forever. It's got to change.
Yeah, that photo that was put up before of the rail line that was washed out, that was actually taken out, well, just in Kaukopakapa in North Auckland. And that rail line was just upgraded very recently after many years of just no changes. It was massively upgraded, and now you can see that it's completely unusable again. This is the Northland railway line. This is it. It goes through. It goes through, and now it's shut again. And so, how do we get goods up? It's the roads blocked, rails blocked. That's ridiculous. This is also why putting up road taxes in a time of slowing economic activities is so bad, because the flow of goods and services is really what facilitates economic growth. So in times, in tough times, in other countries and in New Zealand, we have historically invested a great deal in infrastructure. So roading has always been a key thing, as well as dams, all, essentially things that expand the economy. But when you see things like this, and we've just thrown the country into massive debt, it really makes me despair as to how the amount of money that we have to borrow even more now to actually catch up with all this infrastructure, when it's essentially a lot of money has been frittered away on, I don't know, rainbow crossings, for example. Yeah. And the the cycleway across the harbour bridge that never went ahead.
Imagine how many roads we could repair and upgrade in Northland if we took the speed hump and cycleway value out of Auckland. The millions that goes into that. But
Amazing.
Unfortunately, it's not Northland's money, it's Auckland's money, and it's a facetious argument, but yeah.
Hey, Cowcop is North Auckland, eh? It's in Rodney District. It's not even in Northland.
No, don't forget Auckland Council. No, sorry. Anything above Orewa is not Auckland, according to the council.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We could honestly have a discussion, an entire panel discussion on that, which we probably should do another day. We're going to open it up very shortly. Well, now, in fact, 2 questions from the audience. So if you do have questions for Craig, Matt, Victoria, or anyone, please do put them in the chat. We're going to have an open discussion for the next 15 minutes before we close up. But I see that there has been a question come through, which is, as our fantastic producer Elliot has said, is related but unrelated. Why did Jacinda resign? Matt, why did Jacinda resign?
Okay. So I have my some of them I'll keep to myself, but I think we'll hear about in the near future, probably in the next 2 to 3 months. But I'll tell you something that's not undercover at this moment in time, and that is that she could not campaign. She was dead in the water. Her security detail can't protect her. She can't walk down the streets anymore. Everywhere she goes, she has to have. I understand the threats against her were serious and many. And so she couldn't even have Waitangi Day. She couldn't even have she used to pride herself on having selfies in the street with hundreds of people. And she went from hero to zero so quick. And I liken, as I said in the last live, I liken the Labour Party to the playing on when she was the head conductor of the band that played on the Titanic. And she could hear the screams of people drowning in the lower decks. So she jumped in a lifeboat and got out of there. That's what I think. But they also believe that there's some more bad news coming, and she chose to get out while she could. This talk about misogyny, I looked up misogyny, and that's a hatred of women. And well, that's the brief. One of the interpretations of misogyny is hatred of women. And I think I know a lot of women that do not like Jacinda Ardern very much at all. And so how can they hate women? I think that that's just a narrative produced by the media. I think that people justifiably had real issues with her in the way she governed, and she will be known as, at one point, our most popular prime minister, and at another point, our worst prime minister ever. And I think she will be remembered in history as our worst prime minister. That's my thoughts.
Craig, why did Jacinda resign?
In rough terms, couldn't handle the jandle anymore, but knew that the demise was coming, in my opinion. It was going to be an embarrassing defeat if she remained the leader of that party and the Prime Minister, and that's not good. She's one of the best PR people in the game, she knew, and it was time to walk away and go out, I wouldn't say on top, but go out without, go head held high, you could say, under your own terms. But Matt is right. It's not good when you're getting threats all the time and you can't go out and campaign. That's exactly 100% right. And the misogyny thing is interesting because it only takes a couple of idiots online to do that kind of thing. The media pick up on it and they'll turn it into a massive story, when really it's only a handful of falls, and it comes on both sides, male and female, towards male and female. So, but the media only need a couple and they will make a mountain out of it. So that will be thrown into it. But yeah, the time was done. There was just nothing left in the tank for her, I think, and time to bail.
Victoria, do you hate Jacinda because she's a woman?
She's probably the most incompetent person I've ever come across. I mean, look, I think she did a massive disservice to women in senior positions the moment she stepped on. And let's face it, she knew she was pregnant and then goes off and goes on maternity leave. I've said this before. That was a very, very bad thing she did, because now, like I said then, if you're going to hire somebody, you're going to think, well, are they just going to go off on maternity leave just like the Prime Minister did because it's okay now? As CEO of a company, would you do that? Private company? I really don't think so. It wouldn't last very long. But that was really it for me. And that's coming from a woman who's been in many professional roles. So no, it's a position that requires a very, very high standard. And she didn't meet the standard from day one. She's a great communicator. Definitely have to give credit where it's due. But the depths to which her popularity, her negative popularity, have plunged is just untenable, even for Labour. I mean, the fact that she was getting shouted at, insults thrown by women, please remember, when she was out and about. In fact, some of the most angry videos of angry people have been of women shouting insults at her and screaming at her. So, no, definitely not misogyny, and definitely a great deal of despair. I think a lot of people who voted for her are very, very upset that she didn't deliver anything that she said she would do. So, well, I can't say that I'm sorry to see her go. I mean, what I find interesting is that quite publicly, quite well known now, a fantastic, beautiful house that's been renovated, and I think it was built in the 60s, and it's got part of Mount Albert sliding down towards it. Now, this is in Jacinda Ardern's own electorate, and she hasn't turned up. So where is she? Yes, she has quit as Prime Minister, but she's still the MP representing Mount Albert. Where is she?
Yeah.
So, this is still her job. Excuse me, but isn't she still being paid to be an MP? Is she still, in fact, receiving the Prime Minister's salary until the 7th? I don't know. But she needs to be out there, and she's not. So I can't say I'll be sorry to see the back of her.
No, fair enough. I think I agree with all of you with your comments. It definitely wasn't misogyny. I mean, nobody's I think it was one of you said it only takes one or two people to come out and say something stupid, and then they get blamed for everything. Honestly, she just couldn't hack it, eh? And I think I called that at the last election. She was already looking tired and worn out back in 2020 when she got voted in, and it was pretty obvious she wasn't going to last out the full cycle and run again in 23. One more thing on this topic before we close up back with the floods. Obviously, polls have come out today putting Labour and National pretty even Stevens. Chris Hipkins' popularity has gone way up and is almost matching Luxon now. The one comment we got through is, has Luxon met his match with Hipkins? Open floor.
Okay, so I'll open with this. That's just a bounce from changing, and I think that he'll go back down. I also note what the most important thing in that whole poll was Democracy NZ got 1%, so we're on the board.
Fantastic.
On the One News poll, we're on the board with New Conservatives and Top and the Maori Party. So it was pretty cool, considering we were born 10 months ago. and we registered in October. But I think just getting back to Chris Hipkins, you know, they haven't changed the guard. Still the same people, still the same decisions, still the same team. So nothing changes, and this is just a natural little bump that you get that you'd expect once they change over. We still got the same people. Nothing's changed. Jacinda's gone, but nothing's changed.
Anybody else on this?
Oh, look, he'll give Luxon a run, no doubt about that. But he is part of the cabinet that's made many of the terrible decisions across the last many years. So it is purely just a changing of the guard, but it's the same people. And Matt's completely right. It's an initial bump, but it will be a heck of a fight. I'm frothing, ready to watch this one unfold this year because it's going to be an absolute ripper.
Victoria?
I mean, let's not forget that Chris Hipkins was the one who said that the government would be hunting down the unvaccinated, right?
Yeah.
You know, basically, you know, we're going to seek you out and force you to take whatever it is that we want you to take. We're going to, you know, he actually specifically said that he would hunt people down. That's not good. It's it's evil. It's a very bad thing.
Yeah.
He was all part of that whole team. Yep.
Yeah. So it's, you know, as you said, it's the same thing. So
And
it's just
never
a
forget,
malversion.
he's not trustworthy either. He's lied on multiple occasions, maliciously as well, made up stories about people to feed their plan. We remember the Northland sex worker scandal, which he completely made up, and obviously the Charlotte Bellis situation in Afghanistan, complete disaster for him. So, yeah, I don't think. Well, I hope, certainly hope that New Zealand won't forget that.
He doesn't have the PR skills of Jacinda Ardern above his shoulder to cover up for his mistakes. Now, if he makes them now, he's the one who's got to cope with that, because she owned the media room. We all know that. Whenever there was a presser, she owned the media. And whenever Chippy did something silly, she could come in and counter and deflect. That doesn't exist anymore.
All right, quick fire back before we close in a couple of minutes. Back to the floods. There is big rain coming tonight, tomorrow, through till Wednesday. What do people need to do to protect themselves from this? Craig?
I've been stating a lot on social media about sticking to the basics. Make sure that your phone is charged. Make sure if you've got a battery backup for your devices, that's charged. Make sure your torches are ready. Have a go bag ready. Even if you're in an area where you think it's not going to affect me because I'm up or whatever, you might get, with the state of emergency, they can tell you to evacuate. So have a go bag ready. And it's that old adage of, if you take the umbrella, it won't rain. So if you prep for the worst, it won't happen. This is the Murphy Law we want to try and use. So do all that basic things. If you've got pets and family, be aware of your plan of attack. It's like being in a building and knowing where the exits are. So just know what you've got to do. Be ready to do it, basically.
Matt, advice for the people of Northland who might be struggling with access to supplies? What needs to happen up there?
Absolutely. As Craig said, have a go bag. Make sure you've got fresh batteries, supplies. Keep your awareness about you. If you're in a low-lying area, I probably would go to higher ground. You know, if you're in a known flood area, just go to higher ground. Definitely, because looking at the weather, well, it looks like it's going to be worse than 2 days ago. It looks massive that's coming through Northland. So we're used to flooding up north. We're used to getting hit. So we've got pretty resilient people up here, and farming people are another breed again. So we're used to it. But yeah, there's nothing like a bit of preparation and planning, because we know, you know, to avoid a disaster, and definitely don't get your kayak out and go in the flood water like those poor guys. You know, that poor guy that thought he was having a bit of fun and lost his life. So keep out of the floodwater as best you can, and look out for your neighbours, look out for each other, and we'll get through this together.
Victoria, lots of slips in Titirangi where you are? What do people need to
Yes.
do there?
Well, unfortunately, there's not much you can do. I mean, when the roads are shut, but just to remember, like Matt said, stay out of the floodwaters. Because today, for example, my husband and I were out helping a friend in South Auckland who had been completely flooded, and the stuff in the floodwaters is not good. It's you can have sewage in there, you can have industrial chemicals. You just don't know what's in there. It's summer, which is in fact a huge blessing, because I wouldn't want to think about what it would be like if it was cold and we're having to do this in winter. But in summer, this is not a good thing for children to play in. It's best to stay out of it. Be aware that that a lot of things can be in that water, and you can't see hazards that are in there. Just make sure that you've got some food, some clean water set aside, so that you can go at least a day or so without having access to council water. So, but yeah, don't try to drive through flooded areas, as we've seen a lot of people try. Your car gets stuck in the middle of a flooded road. Don't stop and talk to people to try to give them advice. If you're driving on a flooded road, just keep going, because you've just got to ride it if you're already in it. So yeah, anyway, look out for everyone.
Especially if you have an electric car too. Do not try to drive through water, because they're having a great time at the moment, I see. So get out your old petrol car would be fantastic. Hey, I know it's the Kiwi way to do manus in your backyard when it's flooding, but like people said, just be careful. You don't know what's in that water, and it's all very murky, so you can't see what's floated down the street into your backyard. You don't want to end up landing on a big log or something. I thought it was fantastic to see the guy kite surfing on the new lake in Auckland City, but also that's been closed off now, health warning, so do be careful.
In Auckland City,
there.
You can guarantee there's sewer in the water.
Absolutely. But hey guys, look, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been fantastic to have you on. Thanks Craig, thanks Matt for jumping on with us at short notice. Thanks Victoria for jumping on as well. And hey guys, do stay safe. Remember that the next 2 days are going to be rough, so do be prepared, especially if you're in northern Auckland, if you're in Northland or in the Coromandel. Do be careful. Hey, remember to reach out for help if you do need help. If your life is in urgent danger or your safety is compromised urgently, please do call 111 immediately. And if we could just bring back up that slide again with the civil defence details on. So if you are struggling over the next couple of days, if you do need to evacuate, please do check out these places and do remain safe. And also, if you need help, reach out to your local church, to your local marae, to the Salvation Army. If you have things that you can donate, also please reach out to those places, because they will be needing them over the next couple of days. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us tonight. We hope you have a great night. And once again, do stay safe. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.